massive pleasure for me today to be sitting with Magdolin Boukhary. Magdolin and I met several years ago, and it was as a Bayt customer meeting at that time. And I remember walking into what was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting, and then it felt like an hour and a half later. I could have spent another 3 hours, and I would not have gotten enough. So this is an opportunity for me to learn even more. Magdolin is outstanding in every way. She started off her career with some of the most recognized brands in Saudi, and has continued to be a trailblazer, having worked with King Abdulaziz Medical, Al-Ahli Bank or NCB, Bin Zakr, and today with Evic, if I pronounce that correctly. She's also been awarded repeatedly for all the great work that she's done, including being selected at MISC's Foundation's 2030 Leaders Program, most influential HR of 2024, and being in the top HR executives in Saudi Arabia as part of the HR 50. Most importantly, what I love is she's been a trailblazer in absolutely everything she's done. She's super values driven, and I can't wait to speak more about that and learn more about that. And she's on the same mission that we're on, which is about empowering people to lead better lives. And she seems to have done a spectacular job so far. And Magdolin, I'd love to start right at the beginning. So how did you get into this world of HR, which you've continued to trailblaze in for so many years?
Okay, thank you for having me, Rabea.
Pleasure,
صراحة يعني. Thank you for all the nice words you said about me. How did I get into HR? It was a passion, and I've said it in a few different places before. It started when I was at a very young age. However, I've always had a passion for people, for empowerment, for leadership, for growth, and it started at a very young age. I used to watch my father interview people, and that attracted me.
And was he doing it as an HR professional?
No. He was doing it as a GM of the regional office or the office in Athens, Greece for Saudi Airlines, and so he was doing it to interview stewardesses. And in the past, they had to do it by triggering, their sensitivity. So the questions were asked were awful, by the way. Then
do you remember any of them?
And one of them was I remember there was a dark-skinned woman came in, and he's like, what if somebody called you black? What would that make you feel on the plane? And she was like,
interesting. So he was pressing their buttons and seeing how they would react.
And many of them were basically, pressing their buttons. Do you like how your nose looks like? And it's like, excuse me?
I just became suddenly very self-aware.
And questions that you wouldn't really ask in an interview. And basically when I used to ask him, he's like, I need to know how much they're going to be able to hold their temper, with passengers on planes. And it was very strange. I don't think they do that anymore. Legally, we're not allowed to do that anymore. It was quite interesting for me. Additionally, what triggered me was my father's HR or business development, business operations manager then. And she was a fascinating woman for me at that age, where I said, I want to be like her. Maybe not HR, but I want to be like her. Very prominent, very dominant. She's a mother of twins. She was working. She had a household. So it's like, how can you do all of that and still look good and still look fit and still look, professional? So these are things that triggered me throughout my career to become something that I wanted to be.
How often do you find that young people you speak to today know what their passion is? I mean, you were very fortunate. I find that a lot of people my age still don't know what their passion is and are asking themselves. So
I think as you said, I was lucky. Self-awareness was there from the very beginning. But I think what we lack today in many people, not only young ones, even the elder generation, as we grow, we lack self-awareness. We lack to understand what is it that we really want. Right? What drives us? Is it money? Is it growth? Is it development? Is it the mindset of the organizations? Is it our values? Are we passionate about what we're doing? And do we know what we're passionate about?
And to someone who doesn't know and doesn't have that self-awareness, where do they start embarking on that? So for you, that came early on, and that's a blessing. And obviously you had an opportunity to see things in action at a very early age, which helped shape you. But for a lot of people, again, that self-awareness isn't there, nor is the inspiration. What would you tell a much younger version of you who has not had that inspiration or doesn't yet know what they want to do?
It started for me, but I think I thought I knew what I wanted, and I was walking towards that, or walking my journey towards that. Somebody that really helped me was I had met a person in the National Commercial Bank, and he was the executive coach.
Okay.
Now, this executive coach,
And this was sort of how many years ago?
this was in 2000 and beginning of 5.
So that's about 20 years ago, which in this part of the world, that was still something that...
Who has a coach and,
Yeah.
and who has executive coaching? And so I met him on the executive floor. And then I was like, you know what? One day I'm going to be able to afford you and I will come for coaching sessions. He's like, you can afford me now. And I looked at him, I'm like, how? He's like, I'll only charge you a cup of coffee every time I'm in Jeddah to do executive coaching.
That's amazing.
I can do that for you. And I was like, what?
So that's, you found a mentor.
So what happened was, and what I'm trying to reach out to is start with coaching.
Yeah.
Find a coach that can help you understand yourself, because our role as coaches is not to tell you what to do. It's to help you find out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And during these coaching sessions, and especially with career coaching, there are many assessments and tools that we use that basically can help you understand where you are. Are you on the right track? What do you want to do? And there are various assessments that I do with young ones and also with elder ones. So I started a program for kids coaching, but then I stopped because it was very hard to manage the parents, but not the kids, the parents. Yani. So even with teenage coaching, it's even easier. But driving through coaching in various aspects of people's lives, yani, you get them to understand themselves, understand who they want to be, where they want to be, and is where they are today where they want to be, ولا لأ.
Yeah.
And through my coaching career, and I've seen people that have left being a doctor, a medical doctor, to becoming a chef. I've seen people that she studied dentistry. I've had a person that studied dentistry. And then because her mother wanted her to, and then all of a sudden we discovered that she's really good at admin work. So she became a hospital manager. بس it helps to become a doctor. بس يعني ما تبغى تنظف أسنان وتشتغل على أسنان. So various aspects of people that don't know what they want to do, they're forced to study something because a parent or someone elderly asked them to do that. It's like, you need to find what you want to do.
And if I may, I haven't had career coaching,
Okay.
although I'm sure I would have benefited from it. To what extent is that just you asking a lot of great questions, or are there particular exercises?
Yeah.
Give me a bit of a sense of what that looks like, and how accessible is it to everyone from where you were just starting off your career, perhaps, or early on in your career in CB to much later on? Because I find that as people get wealthier, obviously they're much more able to afford third-party advice, although they're much less likely to listen to it because they think their wealth excludes them from having to. So I'd love to understand a bit about both what that career coaching would look like and how available it is for people at different levels.
Okay. So career coaching in Saudi is not very well known. There are many life coaches we have على عيني وراسي, but career coaching has a different track because we use different assessments, we do different tools. Tools when somebody comes in and says, I have a move to another location, to another city, to another country, what do I do? So we have different tools that we work with. We have people that come and say, I don't know what my values are, and I don't know why I'm leaving a job, and I don't know why I'm joining jobs. So we work with them to come up and understand what are their values so that they can come and create their values of their own. Yes.
And so I heard you in an interview talking about your career values, and it was the first and only time I've heard someone talk about their career values. I've heard them talk about their values in lots of contexts, but not as a driving force in their careers. Two things I'd love to, if you can repeat sort of what your career values are, and then if you can tell us a bit of some stories about how they helped you make decisions, because that's what values are there for, right? To say, I will not do this or I will do this. So
very true. طيب, career values, or there are two pack of values. There's behavioral and there's ethical values. I never talk about ethical values لأنه هيدي كل مين عنده المفروض الأمانة والشرف والhonesty and all of that.
it's a universal, and if you're not following that universal, you have a problem.
بالظبط. Now, the behavioral values, or the values that drive me through my career, the two main ones basically is basically growth, طيب, clarity or communication, transparency, and additionally there are a few others that I trigger. But
I remember I heard something about uniqueness and meaningful work also being important.
Very true. So it's basically how meaningful is the work I'm going, and how unique is that organization to me, and it's going to make me unique. So in both ways. So and most of my decisions in the past 4 organizations, which some we haven't mentioned here today, have been made based on my values. So
including starting or leaving.
Yes. So there are decisions where I made because they presented these values to me indirectly and how you were speaking in it, and I decided, yes, it's a good way to start with them. And then once you walk in, you discover, oh my God. So you walk out because they haven't met your values. Okay. وأنا دائما أقول لهم قيمنا هي اللي بتمشينا. So إذا الشيء مو ماشي مع قيمك معناته مو ماشي مع أنت إيش أصلك في الأصل. فباسically إذا أنت مشيت ربنا حيبارك لك في الشيء وحيرزقك من طريق ثاني. There are sometimes situations when I've left organizations without another job. Right?
But you knew it was time because your values, their values didn't... And these weren't just ethical values or behavioral values. These were career values where you realize that from a career perspective,
it's not going to work. Yani if a place is going to offer me a lot of money and a really good title, however, it doesn't have meaningful work, طب أنا ليش أروح؟ يعني إيش حضيف؟
And I love that, because I see so many people at work who know they're in the wrong place and are unhappy there. And they just stay there feeling that they're almost jailed by that opportunity, when, again, if they had clarity about what matters to them, they'd probably find a lot better things that are more suitable.
The coaching is available for many. Many of the prominent and well-known coaches will have pro bono sessions for those younger ones that do not have a pay. I personally offer any reduced prices to some students, sometimes to some fresh graduates. ولكن يعني we are costly on the other hand. يعني بس again انت قلت عن موضوع wealthiness and are they committed? When a person is not committed in a coaching session or a coaching journey, then we walk away. And I personally walk away. I do not like to give my time, my effort, my expertise, but then ألاقي somebody that is not committed to deliver on the actions that we have agreed upon.
And is the first step of career coaching finding those values? Because a lot of people think about career coaching, find me a job. But I imagine, again, if you don't have that awareness, you're not going to find that right job. I think people sometimes are very impatient.
I get that all the time. And مجدولين, طب I'll share my CV. طب can you find me a job? And I'm like, I'm not a job hunter. Right? I do not find people jobs. I find people find themselves.
That's amazing. And then if I were to contrast that with life coaching, because you made that distinction.
Yes.
Because that sounds a bit like, to me, like life coaching. Help me find myself, and then sort of the world will open up.
Mm-hmm.
So where do those two branch off from each other?
Okay. So to become a career coach, you need to study life coaching initially. So we do both. Right? And I always help people with both aspects. So I help them professionally and personally. Some issues, sometimes واحد يجيني أصله مديري مش عارفة, I want to talk about that topic, and I mean talk about my manager. ويجي في أصل الموضوع إنه he doesn't know how to manage his time.
Right.
It's not his boss, babe.
And you were able to reflect on that in meeting.
Of course, because what we need to do is have exploratory conversations and talks before we agree on what we want to discuss in the coaching session. وبعد كده أحيانا some of my clients يجوني إنه Maggie, I want to discuss this and this topic tomorrow in my coaching session. I'm like, okay. ويجيك على coaching session ربيع ويجي أقول له مثلا, so how are you today? I'm like, تعالوا إيش صار اليوم أو إيش حصل امبارح or what happened last week, and تيجي topic تماما مختلف عنه. But with career coaching there are journeys that we walk through. So for example, شخص يبغى يصير a leader, شخص يبغى يصير a manager, شخص عنده promotion, شخص يبغى يدخل على leadership program for executive program عندهم. مثلا I've had a client مرة كان شاب لطيف ظريف وجاني أثناء last year أثناء الأيام العيد الوطني وكنا off, كنا 3 days off يعني. فجاني وقال لي مدام مجدين أنا أحتاج عندنا sessions حندخل عشان they want to select us for executive coaching and I need help وكذا. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I need to be helped with how to answer the questions, how to sit in the interview, and that's what we do. So we work together صراحة. وجاني بعد 6 شهور قال لي I got into the executive program.
Amazing.
So that was amazing صراحة. الفكرة ما فيها إنه I don't have just a coaching service, and I call my services career enhancement services. So it's niche and it depends on the client. يجيني client who want to talk about the resume and how he understands how to reach that resume.
Yeah.
I have interview preps. So if you're going into a board meeting, if you're going into an NRC interview, if you're going with a CEO interview, a CFO, so we talk about how we prepare you for that interview, how you dress, how you talk, how what you need to answer questions for. I've also had three very, they're not strange anymore, but the first one that came was very strange. Was somebody asked me, an executive, a C-suite executive asked me to help him with his resignation script and letter.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, why? And apparently we understood what's wrong with his boss and how his boss is a very angry tempered person. And so we had to work on what he needed to say to make him feel comfortable with the resignation, what he needed to say to make sure that the CEO was comfortable with his resignation and his transfer and his transition phase out. Yani.
He was being terrorized and needed a good way out without further terror.
Extremely so. It's funny, and you know some of the things that I get from clients is and if I can do it, we'll help together. If I can't do it, then we'll say, sorry, I can recommend you to this person or that person. They can help you.
I think it's clear now from what you've said. It seems it's a combination of both very strategic work, which is who are you, what would work for you, what are your values, and then very tactical work. How do I apply for this particular program? How do I apply for this particular job maybe? Or how do I leave this particular program or job while still maintaining good relationships and dignity? I want to there's so much I want to speak about. I'm going to go sort of backwards again, and then we'll go forward. So we started off with where your career started, and then we almost jumped right to the end where your career coaching. One of the things that super impressed me when I first met you is even back then, you were still a rarity within the HR space as a Saudi woman. HR was one of the earlier parts of Saudi that got Saudized, but for the longest part it was dominated by men, and obviously the whole workplace was dominated by men. And I recall coming to Saudi 25 years ago when we started Bayt and not seeing a single woman in the workplace. And then as soon as that first woman stepped into the workplace, suddenly the whole office environment changed, the men's dress changed, the whole it rapidly evolved. But you were there even before these things started. So I'd love a bit of a journey of what were your challenges getting into the workplace? What were your challenges being in the workplace? And how have those challenges as a Saudi woman in the workplace evolved since you've been doing that?
A few interesting stories. One of the organizations that I worked with, we and people used to talk about glass ceilings, and I never understood them until it was time for me to leave. Being young, being Hijazi, being a female, And it was a very
That's
male...
three boxes.
Three boxes that were ticked, and okay, you're not going to grow, so... And I remember my boss used to be one of the first founders of the HRDF.
Oh, wow.
فإجاني وقال لي اسمع يا بنت الناس, you need to move out. It's too small for you هنا. You're not gonna grow. And I was like, where do I go? He's like, let's look together. وصدفت إنه I approached the next place that I went to. The next place that I went to from there was also a very male-dominant organization, huge organization. And I was the first official Saudi female to be hired in HR.
You were.
There.
Were you the first Saudi woman in the organization period, or the first
No,
HR? That's
in HR.
Okay.
And in HR, you had to get approval from the regulator. Then, yes, right.
And who was the regulator at that time? Was it HRDF or was it?
Sama.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it took them 10 months
to get
the approval and hire me. There were things that I had to do. Was basically my interviews were never in the office. My interviews were done in hotel lobbies. And that was very weird and strange. And my mother was furious, but she wanted me to grow, and we did some of that there. I did my fingerprinting بالبيت. جابوا الشرطة وجابوا الكتيب وجابوا الإنك, and I did my fingerprinting بالبيت لأنه ما كان عندهم إمكانية وطريقة. It's like
subhanallah, they were trying to sort it out. It felt like too. Yeah, you were testing every boundary, and the rules hadn't been set yet.
Nothing at all. ما كان فيه. وأفتكر كمان, interesting enough, when I first joined and أنا ما ألبس طرحة, فكنت I wanted to join, and I was walking around without a headscarf. جاء وقت الصلاة, رحت جبت طرحتي وجاي أبغى أصلي وراهم. كنت واحدة بنت, وكان في حوالي 36-40 شاب في الفلورين. كلهم يصلوا جماعة مع بعض, وأنا الوحيدة البنت. طب فين حصلي؟ أنا أشوف في المسجد إنهم ما يصلوا ورا بعض. فقلت خلص أنا حصلي وراهم. إجاني واحد الله يذكره بالخير, one of the very senior gentlemen, قال لي اسمع يا بنتي, أنا زوجتي أمريكية وبناتي زيك ما أمريكيين, وبرضو كانوا حيسووا نفس الحاجة, ولكن هذه السجادة وهذا مكتبي. لما نيجي وقت الصلاة أدخل جوا صلي, لا تصلي ورانا. ما يفهموا. And I was like, okay.
ورأيك at that stage he did that having already discussed it with them, or it was purely to help you?
No, it was really to help.
He wasn't being sent as the messenger.
لا أبدا لأنه يعني I think we had that conversation with a few of my colleagues. They're like, ليه فجأة بطلت تصلي ورانا? And I was like, I was asked to pray, and I was asked to pray internally in another room, يعني. And I think it was better for me عشان أخذ راحتي في الصلاة.
And I love every time, again, the last time I spoke to you and this time, just the authenticity of who you are. I think a lot of people would never say it. And the fact that you say, this is who I am, and you did that early on is really something. يعني, I know who I am. I'm self-aware. You need to bend your rules for me. I'm not going to bend my rules for you.
Coming to that talk and the challenges in the same organization, we had a complaint that came from Sama زمان, يعني إنه في الهيئة دخلت blah blah blah, things like that, إنه all your females have to cover up. هم داخلين وهم خارجين من البنك. So I remember I was standing next to the CEO of the bank, and we had all the females. ولو شفت الردود اللي جاتنا, فقلت لهم, listen, I don't cover. أنا مش محجبة. طيب, I hardly wear my عباية وأنا برا. أنا جاي من international schools. قلت لهم, ولكن لو لزم الأمر أن ألبس شراب أسود وجوانتي وأحط عباية على راسي, I will do that to pioneer this for the other women going forward. We need to push the way. يعني sorry, يعني how did women in يعني in the Western world get there until they fought their way through? So إذا لازم الأمر أن أنا أعمل كده عشان خاطر البنات اللي جايين قدام, I will do it.
فمهدت الطريق. You paved it for others, which takes a lot of personal sacrifice when you do that, because you have to deal with uncomfortable conversations and situations. And
very true.
And what helped you do that? Because in many cases, and this will bring me, I think you co-authored a book called She Dares. Typically, there's societal pressure not to dare, right? Even someone's parents might say, "Shu بدك من هالوجع الراس? Why trouble yourself? Why bend the rules? Accept your position in life. This is where..." So what do you think made you want to test those boundaries?
Allah yarhamu, my father
رحمة الله.
was somebody that pushed me forward. كان يقول لي طالما أنت منتي غلط move forward. بس وقت ما تحس إنه أنت غلط وبتعملي شيء بيضايق يعني بيضايق الناس اللي حواليكي be careful. ولكن I want you to be something that we're not today. طيب. والله يرحمه, he passed away when I was 14.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so that memory stayed with you. He wasn't there as those troubles were happening.
At all. بس مين كان فيه؟
والدتك؟
Yes. وهي اللي كانت تقول لي فاكرة إيش كان يقول؟
حلو. فهي كملت المطاف. مش إنه كانت هي she wasn't trying to protect you يعني إنه.
But then I remember the first time I've always wanted to work in Saudi Airlines because that was the company that I grew up in. فهمت علي؟ من أول عيد ميلاد لي في الطيارة ل being part of that.
Well, that was a romantic age of flying كمان.
Very true. فاللي حصل إنه أفتكر بس خلصنا الجامعة واستلمت البطاقة حقتي. I did my first resume. رحت حطيتها فين؟ في مكتب خطوط سعودية حق التوظيف. طيب. أنا ما لحقت أرجع البيت ربيع. لقيت أمي واقفة عند باب البيت. طيب. وجابت لي شنطة. طيب. مليانة فاضية I don't know then يعني. قالت لي تاخدي دي وتروح في مكتب خطوط سعودية وباتي عندهم.
ما أحلاها.
قالت لي اللي حيشتغل في مكان أبوه هو حيكون سبب نجاحه ما حيخرج من هذا البيت. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, لما ينسوا اسم أبوك في الخطوط السعودية روحي قدمي فيها عشان تكبري بجدارتك وبنجاحك.
Amazing.
مش هو.
Amazing.
And I cried my eyes out that day. I was like, but I want. She's like, no.
ما شاء الله.
مش وقتك يعني سبحان الله. And
so you the only daughter?
No.
No.
I'm the eldest.
You're the eldest.
Yes.
So you were the one, even within the family, who was testing the limits for everything.
Oh, yes, definitely. صح طبيعة ما شاء الله يعني. لكن again يعني she pushed me really hard. She pushed me to learn Arabic على فكرة when I didn't know how to write or type Arabic. كانت تجلسني قدام اللابتوب. سوري الكمبيوتر يعني. ما كان عندي لابتوب يعني كمبيوتر يعني تحط جريدة يعني. وتقول لي يلا اكتبي واقرأي لي بصوت عالي أبى أسمعك كيف تتكلمي عربي. And I was like I don't know. أنا كان العربي حقي ملاعقز حصانات فهمت علي يعني عربي very very crooked يعني حرام.
طب يعني أهلك متقبلينك وأنت متقبلي نفسك يعني there's a self-awareness and the parents have a philosophy but there's a مجتمع اللي لسه مش متقبل الأشياء. You know, I'm sure other people tried to break in maybe, or they didn't try. Were you the only one to try? Well, was there a special skill beyond just the daring that helped you break boundaries? Because sometimes people try to break boundaries and they end up in jail, as you know. Yeah, it's not.
I'll come to that basically. So I was always very conscious. أنا اللي كنت بربي أخواني مع ماما بعد أبوي متوفى. So I had to be a role model. I had to be there for them. فما كان ينفع إنه I do things that will make me go to jail or will make me look bad.
Yeah.
طيب. I was pioneering for other women in the future. بس مش عشان أخرب عليهم. So I remember that, for example, there were a few that I used to be a freelance journalist مع Saudi Gazette, and there were a few articles that I started writing that were very daring about men's plastic surgery, smoking in public for women, and then there was an article that I wrote about women driving, the importance of why women should drive. مش على إنه they have to drive.
Yeah.
أفتكر مسكها the chief editor in chief يعني وحطها في الدرج وزهمني. اتصل علي على البيت قال لي تعالي لنا بكرة الصباح يا بنتي. أنا
الله يستر.
قصدك أوكي والله ما كنت فاهمة إيش الحكاية. فدخلت قام قال لي أسمعي أنت بنت ناس وأنت بنت صغيرة and I understand where you're coming. Very controversial articles you've done and well done برافو عليكي. قال لي بس هذا التوبيك مو توبيكك أنت. قلت له ليه؟ قال لي أنت أصلا ما تبغي تسوقي فليش why are you fighting for someone else's battle. قلت له صح. فأنا لليوم أنا عندي رخصة ما أبغى أسوق. أخذت الرخصة عشان قلت in case I am hired in a job where they require nowadays إنه بس يكون عندك رخصة قيادة يعني فعملتها. لكن do I want to drive a car? I don't want to drive a car.
But what I'm hearing from you, and then correct me if my interpretation is wrong, is you were very daring, but always respectfully. And I think some people dare not in a respectful fashion. Because you did respectfully, when you crossed a boundary that people were still uncomfortable with, they told you back off. But when they were comfortable, they let you open that door.
In a community where I have to respect this community I'm living in. طيب. Yes, يمكن أنا ما غطي شعري على عيني وراسي, but there are places where أنا حغطي شعري. There are situations where أنا حلبس طرحته. طيب. In my in-laws house عشان حماتي تبغاني ألبس الطرحة مع أخوان زوجي أنا حلبسها.
نعم. خلص. هذا قانون البيت ورح تحترمه.
هحترمه. أنا في بيتي أنا حر أسوي اللي بدي إياه. طيب. أنا في مكان عمل يعني إحنا بتذكر لما جينا على مسك فاونديشن Miss 2030 leaders they asked us to put a headscarf إذا تبي تتصوري in public. لاحظت إنه احتراما لي أنا واحتراما للسوسايتي اللي أنا فيها I'm gonna try and put my headscarf in public whenever I can.
Yeah. And yet, so the beauty is you'll succumb to that rule while still stating what your معتقدات are, what your beliefs are. You know, this is who I am. I'm not going to tell you because I've done this that now this is what I believe. But if you want me to do it, I'll do it. And I think I love that. That's a very smart approach. And I guess that's also why it's helped you trailblaze for so long, that you didn't end up on the wrong side of the fence at any moment in time. So again, from going from a time and a place where you're the only HR woman and Saudi woman and Hijazi woman in an organization. I was just at a HR conference a few days ago here in Saudi, and there were far more women in the conference than men. It seemed like more female speakers than male speakers. I've been going around meeting a lot of our Bayt customers in Saudi. The number of times I go in and meet HR directors who are women now is very significant, and I'm loving the fact that this change has happened so quickly. But I'm sure there are still challenges for women in the workplace in Saudi. What are those challenges today, and how similar or different are they than what they are anywhere else in the world? Have we become, women all over the world wonder about balancing family time and work time, for example. They worry about breaking glass ceilings. But they never used to worry about having to get a driver's license, for example. And now in Saudi, you don't have to worry about that either. So I'd love to see how that evolution has happened.
Okay. The challenges were always there. Have they changed من زمان لهلا? Yes, probably they have. But today, we still see the same trends from the girls themselves. ليش؟ لأن you place yourself في هذه situation. أنت اللي بتحطي نفسك في الموضع هذا. So أنت عشان تبطلي عشان ما تكوني كده. Let's stop this. For example, أنا أفتكر كنت مرة وما كان بداية ما كارير كان في نصه تقريبا يعني. وكنت داخلة على اجتماع ومعي فنجان قهوة. طيب وحطيته. قام جاء 2 of my colleagues واحد منهم and they're senior to me كانوا or لا they were my peers صح بس one of them was part of the family that owned that or run that business يعني فجاء قال لي يعني كنت جبت لنا فنجان قهوة معاكي فقلت له لما تدفع مهري هجيب لك فنجان قهوة تسلم. today البنات عندنا no matter how senior they are أشوف اللي تجيب فنجان القهوة اللي she books the meeting اللي عارف تكون the first to manage this event. لا ليش you have a job to do, respect that job and respect yourself أول شيء. ما حتلاقي نفس الناس يدعسوا عليكي. فاهم؟ عشان أنا بنت I don't have to put makeup and show who I am. فاهم؟ عشان أنا بنت مو لازم أتشيك عشانكم أنتوا أنا أتشيك عشان نفسي أنا. فاهم؟ There are things that we are doing that are making these challenges even more difficult.
Yeah. So you're playing a role and you're playing a traditional role, and that's helping you stay in a traditional place as opposed to breaking into the places you want to go to.
أنا زمان I remember إنه and I learned this from my colleagues by the way abroad. فاهم؟ when I was managing teams abroad in APAC and Europe وكذا يعني لما أقول مثلا we have a business trip to somebody, he's like, okay, let me just check with my partner and get back to you. فاهم؟ احنا هنا تعال خلي واحدة بنت تقول معلش بس أتأكد من زوجي ولا من بيتي وأرجع لكم. مين دي اللي تتأكد؟ أنت working woman. على عيني وناسي أنا working woman, but I have a family, I have a culture, I have a society, I have me as a being. احترمي إنه أنت عندك بيت وعندك زوج وعندك وعندك أبو. Tell people that you need to see your circumstances ترجعين.
Sure. I always tell people I have to check with my wife because I know she vetoes me far more than.
بس الفكرة كلها إنه why is it okay للرجل إنه he says that
It should be equally okay.
كلام عليه. If you want equal opportunities, then treat yourself equally. أنت أولاً as a woman. فالchallenges مرة صعب. Another thing is that because we are women, we don't speak up. فهمت علي؟ why don't you speak up? Why do you allow it?
And tell me a bit about, as a man, we don't think about guidelines for speaking up. We speak up whenever we feel like it in any audience, خلاص, where there's that sense of entitlement. Going back to your early on about test the boundaries but be respectful. If you're going to give advice to a young Saudi woman, would you say speak up just like a man does whenever it comes to your mind, or are there still sort of boundaries that fall within the respect guidelines?
Speak up your mind, respect at home. انت عندك زوج تحترميه, عندك أب تحترميه, عندك أخ تحترميه. بس في الشغل عندك مدير تحترميه, ولكن your other colleagues you're equal.
You need to act as an equal and voice.
أنا ما بقول لكم تقبحوا مع مدراءكم بس يعني you can speak up your mind with your boss with respect, and your colleagues زي ما هم بيتكلموا معاكي تكلم معهم as long as there is respect.
Yeah.
The other thing that I find very awkward is this new generation, right? Is the friendship zone has gone beyond normal.
It's too close.
Too close.
Yeah.
يعني هو ماشي كده وهي ماشية كده, انت يعني ممكن يزقك وانت ماشي عارف وانت ماشيين كده على الدرج. لا احنا فين؟ يعني لأنه أبراد ربيع هذا يعتبر harassment.
Sure.
هذا يعني why are we allowing it?
Yeah, and
you're making it harder for the younger generations إنه الأهالي يوافقوا إنك تشتغلي في مكان مختلط لأنه بيشوفوا هذه الأشياء.
Yeah.
And we need to still work our way through to make sure that this happens for the others.
And this goes back, I think, to your earlier point about just awareness, is that continually being aware of what the right actions within the right situation. Too much familiarity in any situation can be super bad, and not respecting boundaries is super bad. And I agree with you. I realize how many gray hairs I have because there's so much that young people do today that totally shocks me. And particularly within our culture, I do adventure travel for a week every year, and many times I go with groups, and I find what young men and women find totally acceptable today in my day
was not,
from how they dress to how they speak to each other to how they're physically around each other. And it's not that people didn't get up to shenanigans a long time ago, but at least their public personas were very respectable. Now it feels like, we have nothing to hide. And, I find, I agree with you. I'm still a bit conservative and on that. I want to talk a bit about, again, as I've gotten on in my career, I'm finding more and more people my age who, after having worked 20, 30 years in a company or in a career, made themselves good money along the way, gotten a lot of recognition, to wake up one day and realize this is not for me anymore, and they want a life change. And I'm not talking about life change in the sense that I want to change my wife and kids, but really about I'm no longer happy. In many cases, I was a banker for 30 years. I don't want to be a banker anymore. But will anyone hire me? How can I change? Is it possible? I just can't go knocking on people's door telling them, I don't know what I want to do, but you have a job for me. I still need an income because I want to take care of my family. What journey would you take someone like that through, where they're no longer young dough to be molded there?
An interesting story I've had was with one of my clients that came to me. And initially the conversation started through his wife because he's a lieutenant general.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yes. And Saudi, متربي في الطايف كان بعدين جاء على جدة, and his wife was his second wife after his first wife passed away, الله يرحمها. So when he was retiring, يعني بدأت هي تقلق, عارف إنه what is he gonna do when he retires, عسكري في البيت يعني وشيء يعني شيء كبير يعني.
It's not good for the marriage.
أيوة إيش حتسوي؟ فقالت لي مجرين can you talk to him؟ قلت لها if he wants to talk to me I can talk to him, بس أنا ما أقدر أتكلم معه لحاله. فكان بداية الconversation طب شوفي الCV, طب عن طريقه هو عن طريقها هي whatever. And then I texted him once, قلت له listen, I can't work through her. I need to talk to you. I need to understand what you want to do. قال لي طيب. And we did a Berkman assessment. طيب. And he discovered that why he was really great at his job was his job had a lot of mass population and traffic control وكده يعني. What really got him to understand how to do that job was his strategy to plan. His strategy to make sure that everything was under control.
Right.
So his administrative activities were very strong. He didn't think of that. وكان حاسس إنه عشان عسكري that's the job.
Yeah.
And so we discovered parts of what he should do and where he should look for jobs.
Interesting.
Right? He started off with an organization in a regular admin job. And as he started with them, he realized that لا, I know how to do it. And he showed them what he can do more يعني. And he was promoted, I think, within the first 8 months of his job, post-retirement.
Brilliant.
And he went into the corporate world. So we started working together as how you deal with people in the corporate world. إن في عندك سيدات مش زي العسكري, مش أنت في البوليس فورس ما في سيدات كان عندهم أياميها. And it was quite challenging, but interesting that he wanted to do that. So دائما الchange يجي من عندنا إحنا. إذا أنا I'm not willing to change and I don't realize that self-awareness, لو أنا من اليوم للسنة الجاية اشتغلت معك في الجيرني تبعك, it's not going to change لأن you don't want to change.
But what's also very, I would say, encouraging from what you said is that even post-retirement, people can have second and third careers as long as they do a bit of self-discovery and understand what they're built for and what they could probably do.
It's never too late. We've seen people started business and startups from at the age of 60 and 70. And we've had people that have startups at the age of 18 when they knew what they want to do and they want to continue that.
Yeah.
And then you have the job hoppers.
Yeah.
When job hoppers هدولا, they haven't found themselves in some situations. And in some situations, and I was considered a job hopper in 2022 to 2023.
But by then you had already been quite advanced in your career. So that was...
Why was a job hopper? And you join organizations, doesn't meet your value. That doesn't give you what you require from a place, yani. And you say you made the wrong decision, so you walk out. Right? So there are advantages to being job hoppers and disadvantages.
And how do you explain that story? So again, I see a lot of people who have quite a bit of job hopping, and it scares me. And many times I turn away from their CVs right away, because between the job hopper and the loyal person, within certain boundaries, I mean, it's very difficult to hire someone, I find, when they've been 30 years in one job. But at the same time, the person who's changing 4 jobs in the last 4 years, that scares the living daylights of me. But sometimes, like you said, companies can go bankrupt, values might be wrong. What's your advice to people who've had those rapid changes in terms of how to project themselves so they improve their chances of getting through a door and then landing the job? Come on.
Okay. So in addition to jumping because of extra money and extra growth and blah, 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 I believe that if you have a story to tell, you need to be ready to tell the story during the interview.
Yeah.
Right? Position yourself well. Why did you walk out? why did you accept this job? بالذات لما تلاقي people that haven't been job hopping بس تجي عليهم سنة واثنين من هنا لهنا لهنا لهنا. طب it could, maybe it didn't work out.
Yeah.
The company was wrong. They didn't pay salaries. يعني في كتير أشياء.
So when you were preparing your own story during that job hopping period, and obviously you landed in bigger and better things along the way, how scripted were you? Did you go back, write something down, prepare the narrative? Because a lot of people show up in interviews entirely unprepared and say, I know my story, I can say it. And is that the right or wrong thing to do?
Exactly, and that's how we work with my clients about what we call success timelines. We talk about preparedness. We talk about success cards that you write down your stories so you remember them, because
So you do write the stories down?
Yes, I write the stories down. I have index cards where I have all the bullet points put down. And I left organizations and I joined organizations because of values or things that I wanted. So one of the organizations that I left because of MISC. I was accepted into the MISC Foundation, 0.1%, I think, from the 5,000 people. That 0.5%, sorry, from the 5,000 people that were accepted. They took the first 90 people that were there, and so I was part of them. How can I say no to that?
Yeah.
And I have been working along the years to make myself prepared for MISC. So I was preparing myself in terms of growth, in terms of critical thinking, cognitive behavior, all my learnings, and I've been preparing myself that I want to nail this. I even created an email for it.
What I find super interesting about that is you come across as super authentic with everything you say. And what you're basically saying is it's okay to be scripted. You can still be authentic, because a lot of people fear that if they become scripted, they come across as inauthentic.
No, it's exactly like when you walk in a meeting.
Preparation.
If you don't write the things, you're going to forget.
And you're going to be disorganized and you're going to lose the important points, and that will be a disservice to you.
And all I need to do is just put bullet points just to remind myself what I need to talk about.
I totally buy that, and I think it's important. And I'm actually surprised at how many young people and old people come into interviews entirely unprepared. And it's surprising, particularly the people who are not young, how they got on in their careers, given how unprepared they are. Maybe that'll take me to another point that I'd love you to share some personal experiences with, which is you in your career here have come across probably tens of thousands of people that you've interviewed across the years. You've probably seen hundreds of thousands of CVs. And there's probably thematic items that you see that are very common mistakes that people don't realize are mistakes. Whether it's in what they do in their CV, or how they show up in an interview, or how they answer questions. I'd love you to share some of the common mistakes, in the hope that, again, you've been paving people's ways to better career for so long that will help some of the people who listen to this at least avoid some of these common mistakes that they might not be aware of.
Throughout my career, I've had a few people that come in, and one thing that really bothers me is when you don't understand your own resume.
Yeah.
على عيني وراسي, there are plenty of consultants, there are people like me, there are others basically across the world that can prepare and write your CV. But the main thing is when you have someone write your CV for you, you need to understand how to articulate that CV. Every competency or every skill that you put, you have to have a story for it. طيب ما ينفع ان انا اقرا لك السي في واسالك سؤال من السي في وانت تقول لي
I have no idea.
Was that written in the CV? Oh my goodness.
Once upon a time, it was a career consultant who wrote it. Today, AI can write it for you, and you might be equally surprised.
Other interviews where I've had or CVs is when people don't really know what they want to do, right? And so that's when I say, you know what, let's flip it. Let's not be interviewed, and let's talk. Let's coach you.
Amazing.
And
it's great you take the time to do that.
I've done that in a few different situations. People who are scared to talk about, gaps in their CV, don't be scared. There's a story to be told. And as a head and as an HR person, as a manager, as a recruiter, I need to know to help you get to that second phase.
Yeah.
Right? I remember كان في عندنا مرة an assessment center in one of the companies I was working for. ودخلنا الشاب حوالي in his 38 39 years old. وكان في جاب 4 سنين مش كاتب فيها ولا شيء. فالتيم اللي معاي خلاص يعني they're getting agitated وإيش هذا بنسأله مو راضي. فجوني على الأوفيس قالوا أسمعي في واحد he's really good بس يعني في عنده جاب ومو راضي يشرح لنا إيش ده. قلت لهم طب
لغز كبير هذا الجاب.
سيبوه ما يتكلم. لا بس نبغى طب تعالي شوفي أنت. طيب لما دخلت الولد اتربك لما شافني إنه they brought somebody senior. طب إيش نسوي يعني. So أخذته وقلت له أسمع let's have a cup of coffee في الكوريدورز وإحنا ماشيين. بس ماجي I'm like سيبوني أنا I'm gonna have a cup of coffee. خدنا الكوفي وطلعنا برا على big lounge area يعني وصرنا نتكلم.
You broke the boundaries.
نتكلم على حياته أنت مين أنت إيش عندك أنت. And apparently he lost his wife to cancer with a kid that was 1 year old.
Wow.
And he totally shut down from the world.
حرام.
وما كان قادر يقول لهم إنه is that okay.
حرام.
فهمت علي. I've had another girl that I hired and she took a sabbatical of 2 years. وما عرفت تقول للتيم إنه عشان ما اسمعي هذه صار لها 2 غايبة على شغل أكيد تبغى تدلع تبغى whatever. And I was like no let's see. So we understood that between the first kid and the second kid was 12 years. So she wanted the sabbatical to be able to understand how to deal with this child, you know, how to raise that child, how to work-life balance. And she was already a manager in a place. But مش معناته إنه she's bad. We took her on and respectfully she's done a wonderful job.
Amazing.
We've been recommending her ever since when she moved into other organizations.
Amazing.
So there are stories that you can tell that you need to speak about.
And I love you take the time to learn these stories. So everyone else was pushing to take a decision just on what was on paper. Meanwhile, you took the initiative to actually say,
I'm a leader in this country.
Yeah.
I'm a leader of this community. I need to be able to give people the opportunity. إذا إحنا ما أعطينا من opportunity مين حيعطيها؟
I love that. I love that. I love that. MashaAllah.
Thank you.
What would you tell, again, the 20-year-old Saudi woman coming out of university right now about, how she should view entering the workspace and how she should think about that very first job, at least?
If you want equality, then you're not going to find it.
I love that. عالسريع.
Yes. We are not equal. لا في كتاب الله طيب لا في ديننا لا في society ولكن you look for justice مش fairness.
Okay.
Justice طيب لأنه you need to understand how you respect yourself to be able to be respected by others. Understand what you want to do and go ahead and do that. لما تيجي تقولي لي أنا قدمت في 1000 مكان أنتي ما قدمت في 1000 مكان. Exactly understand أنتي قدمتي فين. حاولي لما تقدمي ما تروحي overdressed. طيب try to impress with your brains, with your talk, طيب with your overall appearance يعني ولكن make your appearance professional.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with putting lipstick and mascara, but put it with decency. Put it not to attract people. Put it to help you feel good about yourself. That's all. And it's okay to carry a pink notebook and a red handbag. Totally okay. I think you've seen me when I'm walking.
Yeah.
It's okay. ولكن be able to understand what you want to do and how you want to do it. Respect yourself عشان كل الناس تحترمك going forward.
So much to learn from you. But I think fundamentally it's this wisdom of understanding that life doesn't deal you always very fair cards. And it's imperative that we all work for a better world, that we understand our role in that world. And you seem to have this amazing understanding that I'm not just doing this for me, but I'm doing it for everyone who follows me, whether it's my own family or whether it's women in Saudi or whether it's my country as a whole or whether it's the region as a whole. So, and then as you're testing the boundaries, to continue to test them while being respectful, not to think that you're going to bring down the walls around you, but at the same time to remain true to who you are, which is sort of this concept of knowing what your values are and not compromising your values for anyone else. So if you hit that wall of values, be willing to walk away, because it's more important that you do the right thing, and the right thing will come across, but never compromise that.
Very true.
That's, 100 great lessons to live one's life by. And I'm so immensely grateful for the opportunity to speak to you, to learn from you, to engage with you. And I'm sure everyone who listened to this will be equally inspired and motivated by your wisdom. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you so much, Magdalin.
Very much. Thank you for Bayt.com. I've always been a client, and I've always been friends with many of your team members, and thank you very much.